Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm delighted to be joined again by one of our directors, Shevek Pring. We're going to be chatting about educational philosophies and approaches, the purpose of education and how at TOG we're trying to create a new pedagogy that defines what we do in order to make it repeatable and understandable by other educational settings. Thanks for coming to chat to me again.
That's a pleasure.
I think it'd be useful to start by explaining what we mean when we talk about pedagogies, which is a word that I'm not sure I'm even pronouncing correctly. Maybe to summarise some of the main alternative approaches that exist, such as Montessori and Steiner and the kind of traditional forest school.
Okay. I don't think anyone knows how to pronounce pedagogy. Everyone does it differently, so
Good.
It's one of those words. So pedagogy is basically the approach that you take to teaching in its broadest sense. What it usually gets used as is a way of describing the educational philosophy behind the teacher's methodology in any particular kind of setting or particular style of education.
Yeah.
So looking at something like Montessori, part of the major part of the pedagogy would be about being a facilitator of the space for learning to happen.
Yeah.
So it's creating objects that are the right size for the learners, so that they can kind of interact with them a bit more freely. Forest school is more about the kind of outdoor learning and using the outdoors as the setting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of enshrined in it. Steiner is more holistic, so it looks broader than just what we would look at as a kind of typical curriculum.
I always think of Steiner as like a hive as well, like they all work towards common goals and they're rather than being individualised.
Yeah, but there's a lot more store put on things like the welfare benefits of physical movement or the kind of arts and crafts and creative side of things than you would see in mainstream. Yeah. It's got a more kind of holistic feel to it. Yeah. And then mainstream is effectively what is in the national curriculum as a body of knowledge that is imparted on learners in a very formal kind of learning structure and environment. And those, whilst they're not the whole of the pedagogy in themselves, they steer the methodology of teachers within that. So they form the basis of what the rest of the pedagogy is, which is the kind of methodology of teaching. So you wouldn't get someone teaching in Steiner or Montessori with the same methodology as mainstream or forest school, because the underlying philosophy has an impact on the way that education is being delivered. Yeah. So really, when we're talking about pedagogy, we're talking about what are the kind of fundamental principles that underpin it, and then beyond that, what is the methodology of that teaching? How do teachers actually practice that? How do they use that philosophy to impart knowledge on a daily basis? Yeah.
Do you think, what's the current kind of work around like educational philosophies that's being done? Like, is all those ones we just mentioned are quite old? Is there like anything more recent, like kind of recent educational philosophizers talking about this kind of stuff?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So we're kind of stuck in an old system.
Yeah. So there is a lot of work on a fairly frequent basis on the methodology. Yeah. So the actual teaching practice evolves and changes a lot, and the best practice changes year on year, term on term. That's a very dynamic kind of sphere of research. The actual underpinning philosophies. Yeah. I mean, the mainstream philosophy, effectively, you can track back to Plato. It's ancient Greek. It's this, you've got
I was going to say factory workers, but not
them.
No,
that all was all based on the same. So you've
okay.
got, effectively, if you look at Plato's Republic, he talks about 3 tiers of education. So you have effectively like an apprenticeship class that learn functional jobs and roles. Then you have a kind of interim that learns the basics of maths and linguistics, and then you have this intellectual elite that learns philosophy and ethics and, you know, kind of shapes the way that society works. And that runs all the way through the Enlightenment. You've got that same, you know, esoteric knowledge that is based on classics is what is the kind of pinnacle. You know, you learn everything in Latin, and science and Latin and, you know, philosophy and literature are the kind of pinnacle of education. And then that runs right through into the modern era. You know, if you actually look at the education system we have, people don't value apprenticeships in the same way as a university degree. They're not at the same level. You know, you kind of stop an apprenticeship typically at like level 3, and university is level 5 and 6. It's that kind of, there's still that division, and it's still based on that underlying philosophy that's existing for so many hundreds of years.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't realise it went back that far. Sorry, I was just pondering in my head. Moving on from that, we spoke about the work that we do here at the Outdoors Group existing in, I think what you termed a negative space, where we share similarities with some other approaches that we've kind of mentioned, but don't really fit within any existing pedagogy. What's different about our approach? How can you summarise what you think our pedagogy would look like?
So we defined what we started with almost by what we're not. That's what I talk about negative space. Is we are a little bit like Montessori, but we're not. We're a little bit like kind of true Scandinavian forest school, but we're not. We're a little bit like Steiner, but we're not. And we're a little bit like mainstream, but we're not. So we've always kind of said, well, we're not any of those things. We're like a bit of all of them. What I'm starting to look at as this project develops and what we're doing with the Outdoors School is to really try and work from first principles and go, what is it in all of those different philosophies that is a kind of common thread? What is it that we're identifying with out of all of those? And is there something in that intrinsically within itself that actually we can shape positively? So rather than defining ourselves by what we're not, we start to go, this is what we are actually doing and providing. So it's kind of took me on a bit of a journey. So I kind of started going, effectively every paradigm in education is a reaction to a previous paradigm. And that kind of is true of all paradigms. So it's that shift in thought is a reaction to what precedes it. But is there something deeper than that connects them all? Because there's some kind of fundamental principles that remain, like in mainstream and Enlightenment and modern day mainstream teaching. They all have this common thread that's just kind of implicit in what they do and hasn't really been unpicked. So can you go deeper than that and look at really what is education for? What is education about? And start
what's
to try
its purpose?
Exactly, and start to try and unpick some of that. So I think part of the journey that we're on is to try and really define the root of the pedagogy for us and what we're trying to do. And I think that's important because it does so many things. It informs the methodology of our practice. It makes concrete what exists largely as an intuitive approach. So it makes it understandable and repeatable if you can actually pin it down.
Which is good for both new people coming to work for us, but presumably also if you want other people to be able to do the same thing.
Absolutely, It allows your practice to be more widely recognised and understood and taken on board. it defines what we're trying to do beyond just creating a change in the education system. So it gives us something concrete that is beyond the desire for change. I think a lot of movements have this desire to change. This is that shift in paradigm.
Yeah.
I'm reacting to what happened before.
Yeah, I don't agree with it. Yeah.
There is a need for change, but without then taking the next step of going, what does that change need to look like? How do I shape that change? And how do I know when I've achieved it?
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then the change itself isn't enough. It won't achieve anything.
Yeah.
It will just kind of lose momentum.
So how do you make that shift from change to action? From desire to change to action?
Well, by defining the pedagogy.
Okay.
That's the starting point.
Okay.
You have to go, this is what we're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And that's about that shift from the kind of negative space to a positive
space.
Yeah, because it's not going, the desire for change is going, what we're trying to do is not any of these things.
Yeah.
And then when you go from that to what we're trying to do is this, that's the concrete step that then takes you beyond the desire for change into something that can be shaped and taken forward.
Yeah.
And working out what the pedagogy is key to that.
And is that where you're at the moment, working out what it is?
Yeah,
what do you think
I think
you've worked
so.
out?
Well, we've got some ideas around what it is. So I wouldn't say that it's like really kind of fundamentally there, but there are, so it's kind of a collection of ideas at the moment that needs to be kind of drawn together. In terms of the kind of the actual the methodology that we use, that's been quite clear from the start. Yeah. You know, we've always said it's learner led, experiential, project based, and outdoors. But that's all methodology. That's not. So we need to go back
beyond that
to what it actually is. So I think there's a quote from Arthur Ashe, who was a tennis player.
Okay, that's not what I was expecting you to say.
And it's not. I just stumbled across it, but he said, "Start where you are, use what you've got, do what you can."
Yeah.
And I've always loved that idea, and I kind of tried to change that a little bit and kind of start the thought process from that. So I went to meet people where they are, show them what they've got, and help them see that they can. Yeah. And I think fundamentally, what that boils down to is that the learner is at the centre of what we're trying to do. And if you look at that, then so many things change. Yeah. You don't have teachers, you have facilitators. Yeah. You don't have control of a curriculum, you don't impose learning. It's not something that happens to them. Yeah. It completely fundamentally changes the way that you have to start approaching things.
I mean, I totally agree with having learners at the centre. And for the school, the outdoor school, obviously it works because you've got high number of staffed learners. And for people who are home educating, works because you've only got a couple of kids. I mean, unless you're someone that's got a lot of kids, most people only have, max 4. But within a larger class with a smaller staff set, do you think it's still achievable to have learner at the centre? Like, if you had your kind of class of 30, or do you think you can't shoehorn it into that kind of setting?
Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah.
Because it's not the teacher's journey. No. That's the whole point. So each of those individuals is going on their own journey anyway. Yeah. And so I think it comes back to...
Do you know what I mean though? Like if you've got less staff to help be facilitators, whether it's still achievable?
Well, yes, I think it is, but no, the system's not set up for it. So the methodology isn't there, and the understanding of the pedagogy isn't there. So you couldn't just go, we're going to start doing it like this now. It wouldn't work. No. There's a journey that needs to be gone on. But yes, I think fundamentally it would work for everyone, because it puts every single person in charge of their own learning. Yeah,
and actually when you do that, the paths they take are quite remarkable to see. Like
absolutely. And I think this is so fundamentally what we're trying to answer is, what is the purpose of education?
Yeah.
That's what it boils
Yes.
down to.
That was my next question.
Yeah. So I think for me, education should equip individuals with a sense of who they are, how they are within a society, and it should give them a toolkit for lifelong learning and success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, that comes back to them at the heart of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're not trying to teach them anything.
And lifelong learning is key, isn't it? And in the episode where we talked to Andy and Michael, they were talking about, for them, the Forest School being a community of learning where everyone's learning, and actually most people at 14 don't really know what they want to do, so what's the point in trying to push them down a pathway and do a really specific set of skills? Yeah, whereas actually if you say, here's how you learn, then as you work out what you want to do, that's when you can learn how to do it.
People learn. It's absolutely at the core of everything that we do.
Yeah.
We do it without thinking. It is just a part of who we are as a species.
Yeah.
And what you do by having a really narrow, knowledge-based curriculum that you assess against, essentially what mainstream has become with the national curriculum, is this: you then effectively discount like huge amounts of learning.
Yeah.
And that does two things. Either it completely loses it, or it makes it effectively a hidden curriculum. And when you have a hidden curriculum, what then happens is it can form very positively, or it can form very negatively, but you have no control over it because you have no sense of the learning. The learner themselves doesn't know that they're learning because it's not in school. You know, they don't see it as learning because learning has become discrete, and parents, friends, teachers, whoever else is part of that learning journey don't see it either. So then you get this this potential for things to happen outside what is seen as a sphere of learning that is still learning. So you could have young males that become hyper aggressive because they see that modelled as being a man in the media or whatever. They're learning.
Toxic masculinity.
Exactly. They're learning.
Yeah.
They're just not aware of the resources that they're using or the validity of the sources that they're using, or
and the same with young girls,
any kind of counterpoint to that. There's no discussion there that helps inform that process. It just happens. So you start to learn without knowing you're learning.
Yeah. Well, like the young girls with the makeup and the body image, and it's just insidious on Instagram and stuff.
If you put the learner at the heart of that process, all of that goes back into the mix. Yeah. Because you're facilitating their journey, so they have a forum that is open enough to discuss whatever is going on.
And you're helping with skills, aren't you? Like assessing sources and
absolutely
trusting who's valid. And
this is exactly it. So this is a kind of a few ways of thinking about how what we're doing is different. So we're looking at like outdoors, not indoors, which is fairly obvious.
Clues in the name.
But a step beyond that, we're looking at working with nature, not just in nature.
Okay.
So it's very easy to take a science lesson and teach it outside. Yeah. Yeah. But you're still doing the same learning.
Yes.
Whereas what we're trying to do is more to do with that time and space in nature and using nature as part of that holistic experience, allowing nature to become part of the teaching. That changes your relationship with the space around you. It gives you a sense of place. It helps kind of embed you within a community. It gives you ownership over a piece of land that you can start developing a relationship with and start caring for, and it grounds you in your kind of values in a way that doesn't happen when you just go, nature is basically just a classroom. Yeah, it's just a space
backdrop.
We're using. It does something different. We aim to teach people how to learn, not what to learn.
Yeah.
And I think this is so important. If you look at teaching as just being, here is a body of knowledge that we impart on you in the 9 till 3, 5 days a week that we have, and that's what learning is.
Yeah.
How can you then expect anyone to become a lifelong learner? You've put the whole thing in a box.
I've got a great example. Having home educated for the last 12 years, I'm now approaching a GCSE syllabus with my eldest, and I said to someone who works in education, I said, I don't know how to get all this knowledge into them without just it being rote learning. And she said to pass a GCSE, that's what you need to do. And I thought, man, that's the opposite of everything we've done over the last 12 years, is to be like, right, sit down, absorb all this information. Like, how is that learning? Like, all she's doing is listening to me or reading a book, and I don't know, like, it's not.
Yeah. Well, so what that does, when you start going, this is what we need to teach them, like as in content, not how to
really
learn.
specific content.
Yeah. What that immediately stops being education for them.
Yeah.
And becomes education.
I've never seen her so turned off to something we've done as to me going, right, here's a list of everything we need to learn, let's tick it off and go. And it's like, that's...
Yeah. If that's part of a process they want to learn, then that's different, isn't it? Because if they go, I want to be a climbing instructor, and you go, okay, here is a set of qualifications and here are the hoops you have to jump to be able to do that, they're already motivated to do that. So you're going on that journey with them. And that's different from imposing that on them.
Yeah.
So it really does shift the whole focus. Yeah. And I think it's completely mad that we, as a society, think that we can come up with a comprehensive body of knowledge, like things that people need
that everyone should know. Yeah.
That's going to serve them for... Yeah, you look at when I was at school, like, you could barely get on the internet.
Yeah.
And now there are hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that exist that were completely beyond my comprehension when I was at school. Yeah. So how can any body of knowledge that I learned at school prepare me for a future that's uncertain? Yeah. And that's true all the time. We can't predict the future in a way that makes any sense. So surely we have to give people a toolkit how to learn so that they can then equip themselves with the knowledge they need. Are the sources reliable? Am I going to a good place for the knowledge? Am I critically analysing it? Am I understanding how it fits with my morals and values? Yes. Am I looking at how I incorporate team building and problem solving? Yes. Am I part of a community that's building and shaping something cohesively? Yeah. All of those things is a toolkit. Yeah. That's not discrete knowledge. No. And that allows you then to go out and get whatever knowledge you need to do the job you want to do.
I read this great article about why there's so many amazing teenage activists. It's like, why is this generation so particularly switched on? And they were saying it's because of the internet. And it's this term autodidactic, is that it? So self-taught. But again, like, that's great as long as they are knowing how to learn and knowing how to teach themselves. Whereas if they don't have those skills... Yeah. Are they going to go to the right places? Are they going to get the accurate knowledge?
So that then becomes, as what would traditionally be a teacher, your job becomes a facilitator. Yeah. You're going on a learning journey with them. Yeah. And your job then becomes to help them shape that knowledge. So you become a devil's advocate. Yeah. You challenge them.
Have you thought about this?
You provide them with alternatives. Yeah. You make them really think and debate and understand what it is they think they know.
So when they come home and say, my friend said this, you can go, oh, well, shall we find a way to verify whether that's accurate or not?
Absolutely.
Which is, also, again, flying the home ed flag, but that's what we've always said. Like, people say, oh, how can you teach? And it's like, well, I'm not teaching, I'm facilitating.
No. And they do, they come out with the most phenomenal questions. My youngest, yesterday, he said, Dad, how do they know what time it is in the International Space Station? Because they're flying around the planet like 6 times a day.
I hadn't thought about that.
And then he was like, how do they know when to go to sleep? And I was like, that's a really interesting question. That's a really whole line of inquiry that he's come up with himself that I want to go and find out with him. Yeah. I want to know.
Yeah.
Well, so do I now. It's my interest. And I'm going, actually, I want to sit down with you and find that out. That's really interesting.
Have you worked it out yet?
No, I haven't. I'm going to go away and look at it with him tonight. But it's that I just love that.
Yeah.
I'm learning and he's learning, and it's come from him.
Yeah.
And I'm facilitating that.
Yeah.
I'm helping him to understand the world from a point of interest and a point of strength.
Yeah.
For him, that's opening doors, not shutting them.
Yeah.
If you look at a guy I've read a lot of, is a guy called Dan Pink. He talks about motivation.
Yeah.
And there are 3 really core things that motivate people. It's autonomy, mastery, and recognition.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the 3 fundamental motivators.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's say that you sit a maths test in a class. Okay, you've been told to do that maths work, so you're told what to do. So there's no autonomy.
No.
Okay, you're tested on that, and you're given a score. So there's an assessment of mastery rather than an understanding of mastery.
Yeah.
And if you get an F, where's the recognition?
Yeah.
So you're fundamentally, through that educational system, shutting down every single core motivator that we have as humans.
Yeah.
And then we expect people to engage with learning.
Yeah.
Of course they don't. Yeah. And it works fine when you get an A.
Yeah.
You get the recognition.
Yeah.
So you immediately are hitting one of the 3.
Yeah.
If you get the recognition, you probably mastered it to the point where you were able to get the A, so you can jump through it. So you're starting to hit those motivators.
Yes.
But you're not intrinsically allowing people to approach learning from a position of strength.
Yeah.
So it only will ever work for a small number of people.
Yeah. The high achievers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So other examples, I think learners owning the learning rather than teachers owning the learning, absolutely key. Internal control and responsibility, not external control and tests. So learners need to have an internal locus of control. They need to own the learning.
Yeah.
And the only metric for success has to be how a learner has improved against their own efforts. Nothing else.
That analogy of people running a 5K every week, and it's like they're not running to win, they're running against themselves, against their previous selves. So it's the same thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's that, it's that thing Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's true. The metric for success for a fish is, can it swim faster, or can it navigate better,
avoid being eaten.
Exactly. It has its own skill set that it needs to improve in to be a better fish. And that only works if you measure it against itself. So as soon as you start looking at testing in any other way as being a metric against other people or other schools, you stop that metric being anything to do with the success of the individual.
Yeah.
Because it's not about them getting better, it's about them being judged against their peers or against other schools or national benchmarks, whatever it is. So what happens then is you start to move learning towards, how do I get my learners to do better against another set of learners. Yeah. And that doesn't serve anyone's purpose other than your own.
Yeah.
So you take control of learning off the learner, and you have that as a teacher or a tutor, and you're imparting stuff that gets them to a metric that helps you. And
or
so,
your boss.
So again, the learning just is not for them anymore. It removes that control. So it just doesn't make any sense. You can't. I can't tell you what my sons need to learn to be successful in life, because they don't know what they're going to do in life. So how can I can't do that. It's got to come from them. We've got to look at it differently. And if you start making it about them, everything is learning. That's the other thing. You cannot have a curriculum in the same way, because you can't go, I know these bits of maths are what you need to learn. What they might actually need to learn is how to make their own breakfast, or how to talk to friends and build relationships, or how to get on a bus, or how to eat healthy food, or how to
how to walk into a room and talk to people they've never met before.
Exactly, yeah. All these other skills that are just not part of a discrete set of data that we're trying to impart. So it just doesn't work for them as an individual to have a curriculum in the same way, just because it's got to come from them.
Yeah.
And that's where the project-based stuff really works, because it really allows people to access a project from a position of strength.
Yeah.
Because every project has the ability to encompass such a wide range
to be adaptable,
skills that everyone can go, I can bring something to that project that's within my skill set. So I'm approaching that already from a position of success.
Yeah.
So my confidence is high. I know I can be involved, and I know I've got something to give to that.
Yeah.
And then, because they're engaged from a position of strength, they are then in a position to go, actually, it'd be really useful if I knew this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as a facilitator, you go, either I'll go on that learning journey with you and help you in fill in that gap in knowledge, or actually someone else in the project is really skilled in that, and they can help you, and then you can do this peer-to-peer learning, and you can collaborate, which is such a fundamental skill, and you can actually start to develop those gaps in knowledge through that.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. The collaboration is key, isn't it? Because that way you're still putting the, what did you say, the locus of learning on them, but without having to have everyone on a one-to-one. You can still be in a team working together.
Absolutely. And that answers that, can you have one teacher?
I've just realised I've answered my own question.
Because what you're doing effectively, and this is another difference, is you are focusing on passions and interests, not problems and barriers.
Yes.
So you're not going, you need to know this knowledge, and they're going, I don't understand it,
I don't
see the point, I don't want to do it. That's a barrier straight away.
Yeah.
And so you either go, okay, you don't need to know that. We'll if you need to know that in future to facilitate a project or your learning at that point, it will make sense to you and there's no barrier.
Yeah.
Or genuinely, you don't need it. There's so many things I learned at school that I just don't need. That it's and well, that's true of everyone.
I got A in GCSE German, and I can't speak a word of German now, which just goes to show it was literally a test of, can you remember enough for 2 weeks to pass an exam? It wouldn't actually teach me how to speak another language.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is fundamental to this whole process of putting the learner at the centre is that you have a curriculum that is based around freedom and humanity, rather than a discrete curriculum and rote learning. Yeah. You're not shutting doors, you're opening them. You allow everything, the whole human experience, to be part of the curriculum. And that truly is how you become a lifelong learner. Yeah. Because you go on that journey, and it's not just, lifelong learning isn't just, I'm in my 30s and I've got a bit of spare time in the evening, so I'll go and do an access course at college. Yeah, or an OU degree, or It's understanding your, how your relationships change. Yeah. It's forming new friendships. It's understanding the nuts and bolts of life, buying houses, getting married, having a family, all those kind of things. Yeah. It's the work you do on yourself. It's that self-reflective journey you go on as you change and mature and develop as a human being, and what that means to you. All of that is part of learning. Everything, we're all learning all the time, and that just gets missed. Yeah. If you start to narrow the focus of what learning actually is. Yeah. And then people don't do it because they don't see that as
they don't see it as a necessity.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing I think is that sense of freedom and joy. Yeah. Like, we learn when we're happy. Yeah. And that's so important, is if you can't engage with that, then you're just not going to get anywhere.
No.
You know, I mean, that goes back to kind of Maslow. You know, it's kind of fundamental. But
Yeah.
you just can't access it.
Which is why we address people's kind of basic needs before we think about anything that looks like what people in school would call learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which is learning.
Yeah,
It's
which is
learning.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Making
how
sure
to kind
that
of be
they feel
okay
safe and able to regulate their emotions and talk to someone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we do sounds pretty cool. Well, I think so anyway. But how do you think you can formalise it so there's a methodology that can be replicated? Like that's a big challenge, right?
It is. How do you create a curriculum
where there's not meant to be a curriculum?
Yeah. So I think for me, there's a big part of it is about being holistic.
Yeah.
I think meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
Whoever they may be, that's fundamental. Understanding that their journey is not everyone's journey.
Yeah.
You can't benchmark. Yeah. There is no. A really good example of this is children learn to speak and they learn to walk. They all do it at different times.
Yeah.
So if you put pressure on that, you know, if you say my 2-year-old learned to walk and then someone has a 3-year-old who hasn't learned to walk,
Yeah.
that only becomes a failure if the benchmark is that you need to walk at 2. But
Yeah.
why? Why do you need to walk at 2? It doesn't, you know, so meeting them where they are and going on that journey with them is absolutely fundamental to that. You know, it's that teacher as facilitator. It's, you know, we're learning too.
Yeah.
We're going on that journey with them. And beyond that, I think it comes down to your curriculum needs to be based on first principles.
Yeah.
So how to learn, not what to learn. How to be, not who to be. We shouldn't be telling people who they are.
No.
We should be helping them find out how to be in the world.
Yeah.
So things like a curriculum for kindness. You know, let's look at the actual the nuts and bolts of how a society should work and go.
We
back
actually
to
did
first
do
principles.
a curriculum of kindness from it was a growth mindset organisation, do lots of little ones, and they had one all about kindness, which felt a bit at first I thought, this is a bit twee, but actually it was really good to practically go through and do some of their exercises to think about like being kind, because kids sometimes don't think about it just because they're kids, so it's nice to
definitely
we had to formalise it with them a little bit. But.
And you know, understanding, you know, Robin talks about us looking at the curriculum from the point of view of, you know, where are they going to be and what are they going to need when they're in their 30s.
Yeah.
It's that, you know, it's holistic. It's looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
It's understanding that what they need for success is not just benchmarked by society.
No.
It's intrinsic. It's about them. So you can create, I guess you can create a pedagogy around that in terms of the kind of philosophy, but the methodology,
it's got to be individual.
Becomes quite hard to pin down. And then I think a lot of people start going, well, I don't know what I should be teaching them or how I should be teaching and we've got to kind of reskill people as facilitators and as tutors. Because it is a different skill set. It's a different approach, but they will be guided by the learners.
If they trust.
If they just let the process work. It's like Tom was saying in his podcast about, you know, we're making reindeers today, and someone goes, I want to make a duck. Great. Same woodworking skills. You're still learning the same fundamental principles of how wood works and what tools do and you know how to approach it. But they want to do it because they're making a duck. So why make them make a reindeer if they want to make a duck? It's that, you know, meet them where they are, let them approach that journey, and the skill set will follow. It's so the you know, in kindergarten, the EYFS, if you literally just let them be in the woods,
they'll do it naturally.
Follow them around and tick your EYFS off as you don't have to do anything.
No.
They'll do it all because that's what we do. We learn.
Yeah. We've all seen kids lining cars and sticks from big to small without any prompting. It's like, oh look, there's shape comparison.
Absolutely. We just naturally do this stuff. It works. So I think there's quite a fundamental change in the approach there that is not easy to create a kind of metric for.
No. So franchising might be an answer to spreading it.
Maybe. I think more around the kind of teacher training.
Yeah.
That's where I really think we can have an impact. Is going, there is a different way that, that we can actually explore and start to get people enthused about what that looks like.
Yeah.
And kind of re-engage people with the idea that learning is at the heart of it, not the curriculum and the statistics at the heart of it.
Yeah.
It's like, you can measure success in so many different ways, and it's very easy to become data driven.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey talks about many people. He's talking about careers, but he says many people spend many years climbing the ladder of success only to find it's leant against the wrong wall. And it feels to me like that's what mainstream has become.
Yeah.
It's followed a path that is trying to answer the question, how do we know when we've succeeded?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a completely valuable question, but it has developed into something where the data is now driving what they're trying to do, which has become backwards. And I think that's where a lot of people are really struggling with what mainstream teaching has become.
Both teachers and families whose kids are in those things.
I think absolutely, I think teachers. You ask any teacher why they get into teaching, they want to spend time with the learners. They want to be in front of a class, they want to be doing stuff. And more and more it's become about the planning and the assessment and the marking and it becomes very kind of paperwork heavy, and it's almost like you then can't do anything unless it's somehow backed up or written down or and there's a place for that, obviously. I think this idea of control has to exist in as far as it is our job to keep people safe.
Yeah.
So there has to be a metric of a level of control where we go, yes, we are in authority, and yes, we are in control, in the sense that it's our job to keep people safe.
Yeah.
Beyond that, people will not accept authority that is not competence-based. Yeah. And why should they?
Which again is what Andy and Michael said about learners not going to trust you just because you're an adult.
Absolutely. And why should they?
Yeah, exactly.
Why should you trust someone or do what they say just because they wear a suit?
Yeah.
That's an absurd metric for them to have any kind, or a title. I'm the head of faculty or whatever it is, so you've got to do what I said. Why?
Yeah.
The title doesn't give you control over me. What it should do is it should infer competence.
Yeah.
So you should be good at what you do to have risen through the ranks to that point. And when you are competent and I see your competence, then I will accept that authority because I understand that you have a mastery of your knowledge in your area, and that's what should give you the authority. And if you miss that step, it just doesn't work. It's like there's the same thing in a completely different kind of scenario, but the same kind of thing of the end in itself is everything. Has become an absolute pandemic in young people today. You ask people what they want to be, and they'll say, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be an influencer. Those things come from doing a lot of hard work in something you're passionate about, and that whole
being
bit
really good
has
at
been
something.
missed out.
That bit.
It's that's the bit that counts.
Like
learning a craft and dedicating time and energy and passion to something. Those are the end results of doing that. You don't just get to become famous.
No.
That's not how things should
not how it
work.
works, no.
So it misses out a whole step, and I think the same thing happens with authority. It's like I'm a headmaster, or I'm whoever, and therefore I have authority.
Yeah.
So that's not
how it works.
No, I wouldn't recognise. If someone said, I'm higher up than you in a hierarchy, and therefore you must do what I say, I'd say no. Like, that's not a good basis for me to listen to.
You might not say it so politely.
Well, probably not. No, but and some of the learners don't.
No,
and
that's
actually,
fine.
when they come across that situation, you can't really blame them.
No,
to be honest,
no,
it's a pretty natural response.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed our chat today. Was there anything before we finish up? Anything you wanted to say that we haven't really covered?
I think there's just a few things kind of looking forward on the journey.
For us, or from a kind of theoretical point of view, or for the Outdoors group, or both.
Both, I'd say.
Yeah, okay.
But certainly part of the journey that we're on as an organisation, definitely.
Yeah.
I think looking forward, conflict is positive. I think that's a really big takeaway. I think if you look at it, if it's purpose driven and solution focused, it is a dynamic, creative force for change and for good, and it's so important that people understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's very often something people avoid, or they see it as being a kind of fear, or quite kind of personality based, and it creates a barrier. And actually, if you can get through that and really actually start having that conversation,
I think too many people would rather keep quiet for the peace than to actually speak up when they disagree with something. Yeah. And obviously you don't have to disagree with every little thing, but for the big things,
absolutely,
you've got a challenge, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's really important, definitely.
Thank you so much for coming today. I've already asked you my kind of 3 finishing questions that I've been asking everyone to wind down, so we end on a kind of chilled note. So instead of asking those 3, I just thought I'd ask what you're looking forward to this summer.
I'm looking forward to going to the Green Gathering with my family this summer, because I haven't got to see them very often over the last couple of years.
To all the family, all the siblings and stuff like that. And
my stepbrother is coming with his little boy Jasper, and I haven't met him yet.
That's exciting.
He was born through lockdown, so I'm very excited to meet him.
That's a good thing to look forward to.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
I'm sure we'll have you again on soon. Thanks again to Shev for joining us today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks to everyone who's listened for taking the time to spend some time with us. Please come back in 2 weeks' time to listen to our next episode. And if you'd like to get in touch, or if you have a suggestion of something we should be talking about, we'd love to hear from you. Just get in touch with us on Facebook or Instagram. You can find us at The Outdoors Group. Thanks very much.